Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast Real Talk with Sudhanya. And I'm your host, Sudhanya. In this podcast, I want to take you on a journey to meet people who are passionate, achievers, go-getters, visionary, and yet so real. They face life challenges just like you and me and dare to share, dare to be vulnerable, and keep going. And that thrills me, fascinates me, and inspires me. So join me in this journey where we have real talks with real people facing real challenges right now. Welcome to the podcast. Today, my first guest is a bundle of positive energy, and it's seriously infectious. You will see it. Her name is Katharina Schmidt, and she is the mother of two teenage sons and the wife of the man of her life. These three men in her life are her greatest and most challenging teachers. She believes in leadership equals never ending. Her passion to explore leadership started when building sandcastles. She has experimented with leadership in various roles as a follower and co-worker, as a manager and CEO, as a researcher, and as coach and developer. She has come to the conclusion that what we think we expect of a leader is not necessarily what makes us perform and collaborate optimally. Our thirst for heroic leaders who have all the answers and oftentimes come tall and with deep voices can be inhibiting to unfold the leadership we all hold in ourselves. Katharina started her career as a professional volleyball player. She got her MBA at Kellogg and recently got her doctorate in leadership psychology. She has lived and worked all over the world and now lives in Colorado, soon moving to Southern California. Her passion is to develop leaders all around curiosity, humility, integrity, and collaboration. She works with clients worldwide, one-on-one and in teams, on leadership that is authentic to them, inclusive to the people they lead, with performing teaming as a key outcome. Let's welcome Katharina. I wanted to start with a real moment, about you. I think you totally forgot this. I wanted to remind you, just with a fun fact. Did you know that exactly 1 year back around this time, we had our first conversation? Our common friend, Nicolene, introduced us for this. I was researching on this topic, leadership, for some other work, and she connected us. And I was just checking out that video today, and I saw the date, and it was exactly on 5th of April. So today's 6th, and I was like, oh, this is like quite fun. But before the video, what I really remembered, and I still remember, Katharina, is the first moment I spoke to you. So I think you were still then in Denver, and I was still here in Zeist. It was an evening call for me. And it was Zoom meeting, and you joined exactly on time, somewhere around 8 o'clock my time. And you said like, hey, Sudhanya, how are you? And immediately you said, by the way, my voice is echoing because I'm in the toilet. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to react to this because I have never encountered like not knowing somebody and facing this and like I really want to appreciate that moment because that was so real. And for a moment I was like, oh, like, what did she say? How should I react to this? Like, okay, take your time, or like, are we going to have the call from here? But that really reminded me that, you know, this whole real moment that your values, like you want to be on time, you're in back-to-back calls, you later on told me as well. And yet, we are all humans. We have to go to the toilet. Like, that was a moment of real connection. And I immediately liked you. And we had a great conversation, by the way. And I still, like, when I thought of having this real talk, that particular moment made me thought, like, no better person than you, Katharina. So thank you so much for coming to my podcast as my first guest.
I love that. And I love the reminder.
Yeah. And I wanted to know, like, how has the journey, in the meanwhile, in last year you were working on your doctorate for this leadership psychology. So how has the journey been so far? Like, give me an update for this last 1 year.
Yeah, so the last year was the last year of the leadership psychology doctorate journey. Mm-hmm. It was the third 3.5 or 4 years. And you're supposed to write your thesis, your doctoral dissertation. So most of last year was under the umbrella of writing that dissertation. And I did an experiment, which I really enjoyed. Mm. I tested the reaction of people to vulnerable leadership behavior.
Okay.
And the effects of vulnerable leadership behavior on psychological safety. And it was amazing. And it's also a journey with ups and downs. And at the same time, there's my family, which is the rhythm of my life that went on. That was part of the journey as well. There were moments in the last year where I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna finish May 2022 because I didn't see me finishing it. And then there were moments where I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And then on the 12th of December, I handed in the dissertation and I defended it, and it was fun.
Wow. Like, I know you're such a go-getter. You gave me last year all these like data points, and we had a great like discussion, right? Because I am also in the data industry, and you were talking about these neuroscience data collections that you were doing, and you were saying me, how funny, you don't have a Fitbit? Like, come on, you're in data. So remember that? Yeah, that's super fun.
Yeah.
So I would like take that as a bridge to get into a bit more real, because I want to know what's behind that doctorate degree and all the cool stuff that you do. You coach CEOs. You have been yourself a CEO. Your husband is a CEO. You're like around all these leading edge leaders. What's your own leadership style to keep it real?
Yeah. So I think it's a question that's really hard to answer because it's so multifaceted. Mm-mm. and leadership is a big container, and I would say it also changes with the person sitting in front of me or the situation. Mm-hmm. But in general, underlying, I believe leadership is not so much about the leader or the leadership style that the leader brings into the world. It's about the process that comes after that, and the chemistry and the magic and the collaboration that comes out of it for a team or a one-on-one relationship, because there is leadership in every relationship. I would say for me, it's highly co-creative. Mm-hmm. It's very much shared. Mm-hmm. And so I believe in that there's moments in every relationship, in every team, where people take leadership. Mm-hmm. And I, as a leader, I want to give that my own leadership away. If I have formal authority, or if I have a certain influence in a group, I love to give it away. I love to share it.
Wow. You mentioned about formal authority, and I know from our previous discussions, and also in the introduction, you mentioned that you loved building sandcastles, and you wanted to rule. And from there to this journey, that like you are okay not being the formal, the ruler. Tell me about it. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, I think it's like we all have implicit leadership theories, assumptions about what a leader looks like. What do we do when a leader is in the room? And we often confuse leadership and influence and formal authority. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the journey was really, I was definitely someone I liked to have influence. Mm-hmm. And I definitely like to make things go the way I want them to go. And that's what I was in the sandcastle. I was always, it was in German at that time, I was asking who determines the rules? And I remember I wanted it to be me.
Oh, wow.
But I think I would also surrender or obey if someone else would do it. But I really wanted it to be me. And I don't know how, I realized that looking back between maybe 15 and 30, and definitely my first job, I was surrounded by dominant, socially they were very skilled, dominant, male, white leaders. And maybe it was my father. It was father figures that I responded to. A lot of it is subconscious, of course.
Right.
And over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, I realized that leadership it comes from every corner of the world. The stories that I read, the people that I talk to, I see so much leadership around me. And it's not always a person with formal authority standing at the top of the pyramid. And I think a big experience was my own when I was a CEO, and it was a small, mid-sized tech company in leadership and strategy development. I think I really struggled with the change that the formal authority gave how people treated me.
Like what kind of struggles?
There was less natural equality in the room.
Right.
And equality it's almost a given for me. And like I'm not extremely influenced or impacted when there's authority in the room. I'll still stay equal, but I also don't like it if people ascribe a lot of authority to me. And treat me differently because of my position. I struggled with that.
I think that's also a kind of cultural thing, right? Like because you are quite brought up in Europe, like Germany, Netherlands. The culture here is quite much more flatter, and right now you're in States, which is I don't know, maybe a bit more hierarchical, and it is like the culture of pleasing your boss. Or trying to get earn extra cookies, and competition is much more visible, and people treat you in a different way, and that feels not so authentic. That's what you mean?
Yeah, partly, and it is whenever someone has status. In terms of a position or a title, then you treat them differently. And I really think, even in Europe, I know that in Eastern cultures it's probably more pronounced still. But even in Europe, most of us grow up with obeying to authority. And authority has, and also if you look at and I did too, I just noticed along the way that I also had other needs, Like there's experiments when authorities in the room, that people will do strange things to please the authority.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and how do you were on the other side, right? You were in a privileged positions,
Yes.
and that does in a way serve the ego, right? That you feel like, ooh, I'm treated like so specially. I'm special now, and how did that feel for you? Was it like always like, ooh, I'm being treated, like your ego supported it, your ego rejoiced it, or like you were neutral to it?
Yeah, that's a very good one. I mean, we're all human, and I liked some of the privileges, being invited to certain things, or speaking, like being put on a soapbox and speaking about stuff. I like that influence. So it's definitely, and it's still a part of me. I grab influence, I grab abilities or opportunities to take a position and to influence others or to make a movement going. But I also found it, and I want to check my ego on not getting addicted to it, and on treating every person I meet on the street with the same respect, regardless of their position or their car or the money that they have in their bank account or their title. I really believe part of being human is bringing kindness into the world.
Like being grounded in that sense, you know. That's, I think, I also like always like think about it like especially for high achievers, like the more you achieve, the more you feel like, ooh, now I have done this, ooh, now I have done that, and suddenly in no time you are like in the air flying, and maybe you forget that like there are people who are in their journeys in different phases of their lives, and like how we behave. It's difficult once you have achieved a particular position, and it takes hard work. You work very hard for it. You strived for it. You showed your resilience and strength. So I can value those things. At the same time, it is a kind of a very strange balance to put, like to still go back to that position and realize like how does it feel to not have it, and treat the other person from that situation. Like it's just not a mindset thing. Like, do you have any rituals or like any practices that you have to really like, help me do that?
I think I have many, but the big, so just being aware of that power or sources of influence. And money is power. Position gives power. Your voice, your height gives you certain power if you come into the room. So it's just being aware that these sources of influence and power do something to your soul and to your ego, and also I remind myself a lot. I'm a human being. We're all human beings. We all consist of cells. And we create thoughts in our brains, and every human being deserves to be treated with respect or with kindness. That's one thing. The other thing is to occasionally disrupt yourself. And what I mean by that, I disrupted myself when I remember my husband, when our kids were like, I think 1 and 2, he accepted a job. And he had to travel to Lugano every week. And so he would travel every week. And I said, I'm not going to come with you. I want to bring up our kids in Amsterdam on the bike. And so I stayed in my job in Amsterdam, and I did that. And then I started my own business. And then when the kids were 7 and 8 in 2017, like a little bit before that, for the first time, I said, okay, I'm ready to follow you now. And so he reached out, and he was able to get a job in San Francisco, and I followed him. but that meant I had to leave behind my network, my work, a lot of money that was coming in from clients, a lot of recognition, and I became a stay-home mom. I immediately had a few gigs, but it was the opposite of what I had. I had like a more than full-time work week, my 2 kids, everything was organized. And I came to San Francisco, and all I did was bring the kids to school and bring them back and look a little bit for work left and right.
Wow.
I had a few things. I remember I had my first 3-day workshop. We came in end of July, and I had it in August. And it was so fulfilling. But what I learned was disrupting yourself. I disrupted myself, and I really suffered because it wasn't in my dictionary to only be a stay-home mom. I couldn't even get it out of my mouth. And then the worst thing was my husband had like this amazing CEO position, and people around us were all like, oh, I became the wife of the CEO. And it was very humbling. It was extremely humbling. And I would say that humility, it's a practice, and mindfulness helps, and meditation helps, and getting, like, catching yourself thinking in differences. Oh, I'm better or I'm worse than somewhere else. Just catching yourself doing that, and then saying, yes, I might be better at this, but someone else might be better at that. And in the end, we're all cells and energy and blood that flows through the body.
Right.
And we all have talents and a right to be here. I think reminding ourselves a lot about that.
Yeah, like hats off to you, like knowing like how powerhouse person you are and your like ambitions. I did not know this. Like, thanks for like making me aware that you completely left all your. It's like somebody saying me right now after 15 years of working, like leave everything and shift to some other place. And I'm like, are you crazy? I can't even really, Katharina, can't even imagine that situation. And you did that. Like, can we like dive into this a bit? Because I'm very curious. How did you do these boundary setting conversations with your husband and like this come to this decision and like ultimately you both need to be happy with that decision and feel respected and not later all get into this guilt trip your husband as well, you know, because you being so powerful, you have that capacity, I know.
Yeah. I would say it's funny. You're touching on something that I've become much more aware of over the last 5 years. It's the contract that you have or I have with your partner that I had with my husband. And you, like in the beginning of our relationship, and it's a psychological contract. It's not usually not written on paper and it's not signed. But when we got married, we didn't think of kids for a long time. We just both worked hard. We played hard. We saw each other in the weekend. We would travel everywhere. We really discovered each other and ourselves and the world. And the contract was we were equal. Like household, all the chores, everything was equal.
Right.
Then we put kids into the world. It wasn't that we would sit down and renew the contract. Who does what? And how do we share the care for the kids? And what I experienced, and it's probably what many mothers experience, it came out of me.
Yeah.
So, and it was connected to my belly button. And somehow I had a tendency to take more of the kids' care on me. And I think many mothers do that. And if you look at the research, it's still like 80-20, 70-30. Maybe in some families it's 50-50. That's wonderful. For us, it was definitely I did more. And when we moved to San Francisco, I already had done a lot more, but then it like kind of shifted completely. And we had to find a new balance. And it wasn't, we didn't sit down and write a contract. Even though I remember when my husband started to work in Lugano, and we had a few transition weekends, which were full of meaning, full of friction, and they weren't fun. There was a lot of bickering around. I remember him taking 2 empty sheets of paper, and he said, "What do you need from me when I come home in the weekends?" And I said, "I need you to be present. And I need you to help." And then like behind that, there were like many, many little things. Clean the bottles, do this, do that, change the diapers. and I wanna be with you. That was like, I had 5. I don't remember them all anymore. And it was funny. He said, "I need harmony." I didn't give him harmony when he came home. I was like bitchy. And I need harmony, and I want to do things with you. So there was the being and the doing, and there was the harmony and the presence and the helping. So we had different needs, but I remember that exercise, and it stayed on like our heater with magnets for a long time. It really helped. So that was almost a new contracting. When I came to San Francisco, I was really struggling with my identity. And so I had gotten addicted to my status as a working mom, and I was struggling to find who I am without amazing clients and a lot of recognition from those clients. My kids didn't give me a lot of recognition, and they don't have to. They didn't ask to be in the world. We brought them into the world. We have to figure out how we organize their lives.
Wow. I think like that's a very important topic I wanted to actually get in later, but I think this is the perfect time to get in, is like the motherhood part. And we were talking about this whole leadership thing and being the go-getter and showing the direction to the team, and you get so much attention. It is a risky job, but still you get a lot of attention. And you were saying right, the ego part, that is also very much and that's a very masculine way of being, and it's like, to be frank, it's like yummy. Like I enjoy it, like in any kind of job type. And from there you enter motherhood, and you suddenly enter, I can imagine, like although it's traditionally like women are taking care, but like here I hear you that you chose to take care of your kids because they are through you, and that's what motherhood fundamentally changes. But still, day in, day out, all the intellectual stimulation, changing diaper, I don't think so. After a few weeks, it's that intellectually stimulating. I think it's more emotionally stimulating. And like you're doing boring chores, and you like if you're not ambitious, that's a different thing. That's like a really easier game. But like knowing you, and I think I'm trying to ask my personal questions to get clarity on this topic. Like it really hits you like rock bottom. Like you are not celebrated, you're not applauded. In fact, motherhood is such a, I would say, undervalued, not even respected enough for the work that is done, like applauded or like, recognized, compared to all these masculine, which we also do, like as females, like part of the work. Like it must feel like devastating, or like, I don't know, like how did that experience affect your leadership coming back?
Ooh, it's a good one. I think it definitely affected my leadership. And there is something about the work that you and I do happens in a masculine system. I'm not saying it's a male system, but and typically masculine is, there's competition, you need to achieve goals, there's pressure, there's winning. It is about winning, and it's about I need to be better than you, and I'm exaggerating. So just to get the stereotyping right, and then there is this incredibly vulnerable human being that you put into the world that it takes 9 months to create it and comes out, and there's always some little trauma happening in that process. And I became a lot more aware of my own vulnerability. And all of a sudden, it wasn't just about me. It was the pain that I have 2 boys, and I got them 14 months apart from each other. And the second one had a chronic disease, and he had to stay in the hospital forever, and he needed surgery, and it was really hard. The pain that confronted me with, it was the biggest crisis of my life. I mean, you get your crisis as you need them, and probably, I don't think crisis is only or trauma is only bad. I think nobody gets out of childhood without any trauma. Nobody gets out of life without any trauma. Nobody gets out of life without any crisis. And crises are teachers for us. And what it definitely brought to me was that, I felt regularly torn apart in the beginning, because I wanted to be there all the time, but I dropped them off at a daycare, and I didn't know what was happening at the daycare. In the beginning, I found that really hard. But as you know, as I know, and who knows who else, that struggle, the friction inside me, the being torn apart, also made me wiser. It helped me to take more perspectives. It helped me I'm not judgmental of any choice that a woman makes regarding the way he or she wants to bring up her kids.
Right.
If she wants to stay home 100%, if she becomes overprotective, if she wants to be everything to be done by an au pair, if she wants to work more than full time, be away the whole week, it is your choice.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that many of us get to make that choice. Not all of us, not enough. And I'm the same for a dad. If a dad wants to choose to be a dad 100% of the time, I understand it, because I've been in that position. I wanted to be there all the time, but at the same time, I didn't. I wouldn't want to be there 100% of the time. Please, I would be horrible. I'm not good at it. So I was torn between different positions, and that struggle made me wiser.
Yeah, so you had the choice to build your career around things, and it's not like for you, I really know that it's not like a by the way job, like a time pass. You have purpose, goals, values, you want to contribute to the world. It's a service for you, so it's something that also you just don't want to put in water, and so it's a choice, like what you mentioned. And at the same time, I'm really sorry to hear about your second kid. I think you also had a choice to completely give up yourself and be a full-time mom with this situation. So what kept you to keep on being Katharina apart from being a mother at that critical moment?
Oh, what you're saying is so, especially with the second one. So with the first one, I had to struggle, but it was okay, and I could manage. And then the second one, and the disease, and I could have become his disease. I could have become a full-time mom and protect, because it's cystic fibrosis, and it's a lot about preventing him from getting in touch with bacteria, cold bacteria, that in the end then develop into pneumonia. I could have become an overprotective helicopter, super duper identified mom. But
were you?
I wasn't. I mean, if you ask people around me, they probably would say, "Oh yeah, she was very protective." But it was also a life and death disease. there was a voice in the back of my mind, and it is really different for everybody. But for me, the voice was, if I stop working, I become so insecure, I fall apart. I can't face the world and life anymore. That was,
Right.
I think that was, I mean, you could analyze me and we could do some therapy, because I could probably even go deeper on that one. I realize now. But there was a fear of falling apart, of losing all my confidence. And it was like, I need to keep practicing that muscle. And even though there is this urge to be with him, to protect him, to not let anybody, especially in those first, I don't know how many years, I don't know what the thinking was, to not let anybody be close to him, to not let him go to daycare where he would get colds and he would need to take antibiotics, and the lung function would deteriorate. I didn't want to give in to that fear only, and to that urge of being there all the time only. I wanted to have a different part of my identity as well.
Wow. Like, I have so many questions. Like, one is like the first is like, I think, kudos to you, like how you are presenting this topic. It feels like, oh, by the way, I just like took care of a child who in this, I think, you had a fear-driven option, but you picked a courage-driven option. And like, I have seen your pictures, your family pictures. Your boys look amazing, healthy, and which already showcases that you have been a great mom. Like, just when I see their faces, but you're smiling now. I can imagine at that moment when you knew that, like, my boy's life, it's about matter of life and death. How did you handle your own mental, emotional, mother? Like, for now, I'm going to keep leadership completely aside, because it is a leadership topic, because motherhood and like being in a relationship, family, it is co-leading with your partner. Like, what was going through your mind when you got to know, and when you were going through these initial days of coping up with this big news?
Oh, I love to hear what you take out of my story, because that was probably the most painful, one of the most painful moments in my life. And I do this work where I sometimes look back, what are the most emotional moments in my life? And hearing that, like, his average life expectancy at that time was 37, 38. And it was a very poor, like, the prediction was very poor quality of life, lung function deteriorating, half of the year in the hospital. I mean, in the beginning, and it's almost impossible to talk only about my own process, because it was Arne's, my partner's, and my process together. I always call it, we were in the cellars, in the basements of our lives. It was dark. We were afraid. Both of us were athletes, professional athletes. We didn't like the smell of hospitals. We never go to the doctor. We are fit and healthy. We take care of ourselves. And we were dependent on hospitals. We were dependent on doctors all of a sudden after the diagnosis. And antibiotics wasn't a part of our lives, but we were dependent on antibiotics, because without them, the little one would have died of pneumonia. I went through all the stages of any grief curve that you look at. In the beginning, it was denial, it was sadness, there was a lot, there was mad. I was mad, I was angry. I was like, why? Yeah. Why him? Why does he? And then people would say, oh, it's good that he was born into your family, because you can handle this. And I was like, I cannot handle this at all. I don't know what to do with this. I was falling apart.
Because it's so personal. It's literally from your belly button.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And my husband was a lot more quiet and inside and working hard. So we dealt with it differently. It also had the potential to break up and explode our relationship.
Right.
This was not what we had signed for.
No.
We also had just bought a pretty expensive house, and we're like, okay, one of us has to start working if we spend half of the time in the hospital. And we were worried about our other little buddy who was at the time when the little one was born, 14 months. And he went with us through the crisis. I mean, of course, we would cheer him up. We would be with him when we were happy, but there was this big trauma happening in the back of our lives, or in the front of our lives. I don't know. I think nobody gets out of here without crisis, and crises are teachers and opportunities to learn. I think the Chinese sign for crisis is threat and opportunity. And I definitely see that it has made my life richer. The fact that death came on the table and the confrontation with the potential death of this little boy, or earlier death in his life, it's changed now. I'll tell you in a minute. It has changed how I live life. And what it definitely did to both of us, it propelled our energy and our ambition. But after the first 6 months or so, when he was home, we got a grip on the disease. We had to do a lot of extra stuff for him. Like, he had to nebulize every day for hours and take pills with every meals. And like, a little boy can't take pills yet, so you need to find ways to get them into his body and stuff like that. But then I think it propelled both of us in, okay, we need to live now, because we don't know how long we're going to stay out of the hospital. So we need to live our life fully now. So that's when I decided, and I don't know what devil rode me and what confidence drove me. Ola was 7 months old when I started my CEO job. And at that time, I didn't tell anybody about his disease, because I couldn't. I would have, if you had asked me at that time, I would have cried.
It was a wound.
And I would have, it was such a wound. Yeah. And I think it took me at least 2 years to start talking about it. And we started a foundation. We raised in total, I think, 250,000 euros.
Wow.
It was called Run for Your Son, because running is very good for cystic fibrosis. It loosens up the mucus. Often patients are very tired and don't have a lot of energy, but so it's counterintuitive, but still it's really good for people who have it to run. And we went running with him. We went to New York with 30 people. That was the first round. I think we raised above 100,000, and Arne ran the marathon. And at the end, I gave him Ole on his back, and so he finished with Ole on his back, which was amazing. Wow. And it was a way of dealing with the pain and coming out of it.
And I think that's where one of your key skills is being positive, which you already showed in your work beforehand, but it was still superficial, in spite having all the success. And you kept that attitude in your personal life, and wow, super impressive. I can see in your face also, the whole pain gave you strength. You turned this whole story around, and which you could be crying, you could be, and I don't want to judge it, but you give so much of power to something which is so I think vulnerable. It's about life and death, what you say. And and thanks for sharing it. I think it's a very, very personal story. especially like again going back to motherhood, like now, like again, like what you were going through as like this ambitious professional, and you were challenged like whether I should give up my whole career. But the second part, which I wanted to deep dive, is like also you were saying is you didn't want to give up your job because a part of you thought that you are going to fall apart. You felt super insecure. You're going to lose all your confidence.
Yes.
Like, what's your take on it right now when you look back?
Yeah. I still think for me, confidence is a muscle. And growth mindset and going out there and keep on doing stuff that maybe not scares me, but that challenges me, whether it's intellectual or in terms of courage or commitment. The doctorate was that. And it wasn't on my bucket list anymore. It was not like, oh, I need to become a doctor at some point. It was like, I was in San Francisco. I had a lot of time. So I was like, okay, what valuable and really valuable, not so much performance-driven or ego-driven thing. I mean, it definitely caresses my ego to be Dr. Cat if I want to. But it was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to learn something. And then I figured out, oh yeah, I always wanted to do psychology. And I have an MBA, so I'm like international business, very much business. And then I learned my job at the first company where I worked, the job as a trainer, coach. And it was so fulfilling. And I had like, so that
So
I think I forgot. What was your question again? Tell me.
So I was mentioning like, what's your take on like your job
now?
Like you left and you started being an independent executive coach for leaders, right? Like, and that's when also right now, like you did your doctorate and pursued your passion. But like when this whole personal tragedy was happening at the same time, like where you had an option to give up everything and be a full-time mom to handle this whole crisis situation, still you had this whole big drive in you because you felt like you would be totally falling apart if you don't have this job. Like, were you identifying your ego, your whole identity through a job? And what do you think about it now?
Yeah, I love the question. So I still, as I said, I still think for me, confidence is a muscle, and working and growing. The growth muscle is a muscle. Learning is a muscle. Putting myself out there in situations where I'm not the expert or I don't have all the answers is a muscle. Practicing my curiosity is a muscle. So I think that for me, that was definitely the right thing. I also believe that with the like it wasn't always voluntary, the disrupting myself. Like I had these 2 children, and both children were a disruption of of all my values, of everything I had experienced before. And then moving to San Francisco, moving to a different continent, leaving my network and a big part of my job behind was another disruption. It was a bit more voluntary, but I couldn't really foresee the consequences and the struggle that I would have with my identity when I made the decision. Like, you know, we all make decisions with, oh yeah, I'm gonna move to Zeist and I'm gonna work for Capgemini and you just don't know what the side effects and the consequences, the unintended consequences are. We don't always know that. So I think for me it was good. It was good that it gave me that push. I would also say right now there is more balance. I don't need to tell people what I do. I'm I think the pandemic was another disruptor for all of us. It
Right.
disrupted life as we knew it. And we had to consider, what do we derive our status from, or what do we derive our satisfaction? How do we want to live our lives? You see it in the Great Resignation at the moment,
Yeah.
where people are like recalibrating and saying, you know what, I need more meaning, or I want to work less, I want more balance, or I want to spend more time with my kids. Because I think the moment that death comes, it's a concept in psychology, death, mortality salience. It confronts you with your own mortality. It changes how you look at life.
Right.
And
Beautiful.
for me, there is a lot of clarity, and there's also always non-clarity, which is fine. I can live with that. There's more balance, I would say, in my own identity between the performance and ego-driven part and the present, more mindful meaning and maybe giving back and contribution part.
Yeah. It's so interesting, right? Like, I think what's happening in the microcosm, like in your individual life and what we are seeing in the collective is also like reflecting that we are moving from a structured, like dominated heroic leadership to what you're saying is like a more balanced, like be your own leader, like self-managing and also being vulnerable enough. And like we, on an individual level, we are also moving, and also like the collective, and really greatly mentioned, like about the Great Resignation. At the same time, we don't want to, like, especially I would say for females, I still feel like I really want to embrace this. Like I'm all about emotional intelligence and showing my vulnerabilities and being this real person. Still, and I think I struggle with this as well, like still I don't want to give up my data side. I don't want to give up my fact side. I don't want to give up my masculine side, because still I think I am respected more for that.
Yeah, interesting, Sudhanya. Yeah.
Like still I know that like if I become a mom and like a full-time somebody who is like only, practicing vulnerability, that wouldn't give me respect in the society. And that's why I feel like motherhood is such a undervalued caregiving. Like even I think there was data there is this statistics which I read somewhere that was about guys, like companies, how would they hire people? Like what it would be the status of it? So the least preference, of course, is like females who have kids. And then that was the least one. This is interesting here. Next is like females who are single. Then the second one is males who are single. And number one is males who have kids. So the first priority that goes to when it comes to offering a job is like males who have kids, and least priority is with females who have kids. So like I just don't understand why is caregiving such a like skewed and a disbalanced industry still, and why we are still not seeing it as government, companies, organizations to bring more value, to have even more because I can imagine that we learn much more than these application technology statistics, than like when we are actually bringing up a baby inside our body, we learn much more. Why is that not celebrated, respected, and why don't I growing up also I blame myself, and I also I'm like extremely introspective person. I always felt like growing up I valued my father's position more than my mother's position.
Wow. Yeah.
and she was homemaker, but she was a homemaker to build us up, and that totally backfired against her, and like she now suffers from bipolar since many years. And I think a big reason of it is like how we have built this society. We have not, like you were mentioning that you had the opportunity to choose, but like in many parts, it was still not an opportunity. And that right now at this moment scares the shit out of me.
I get it. And look the amazing human being that your mother was a part of bringing into this world.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a few things that come up. You didn't even ask a question, but like one is, it's not either or. And you will probably, if you became a mother, you don't have to. There's research that shows that doesn't necessarily contribute to happiness, depending. So it's balance. I would say that as a society, what you talk about recognition, and you appreciated your father's work and status more. It's signs that we, like the masculine parts of all of us, recognize the masculine parts out in the world and appreciate those more. So, and that is, it's promotion, it's performance, high performance, and not so much caring. There are probably some societies that might do that more. I think equality in the distribution between husband and wife, and again, everybody can make their own decisions, but I think equality is super duper cool.
Yeah.
And it brings good stuff into relationships. So father and mother, both partners. I also think that the kids need both energies. And whether you live together or you don't live together, just make sure that both those energies can get to your children, those individual energies.
But don't you think like what you mentioned, that since your kids are from your own body, you would have like naturally a tendency to be more nurturing, and I think that's a very basic female quality. And I'm not saying that males don't have it, or like it's not like males are not more nurturing. That's, you started as equal partners, and still with your own choice and with your pride, you move towards more on a nurturing role. And it's fine, but the thing is that, like, why can't we appreciate and celebrate that? Like, we are having completely two different roles. One is structured, and one is a breadwinner, and one is the nurturer.
Yeah. Hey, and that I really think that whether you're male or female, you have both qualities in you, and then society, or what we think we should do, or the system or the family that we're in, or what our mothers want from us or fathers expect from us. So for me, if I would do it again, I learned for fathers to lean in, mothers have to lean back. That's definitely, and it was my responsibility. And my husband has a very, very caring and nurturing side to him. He can do it fully. But wow. I did most of it just automatically, and it was subconscious. Again, it wasn't a written contract, who does what. And the other thing, in terms of, I don't really like the word balance, because it means that it doesn't have to be balanced. But I think if you look at how we live our lives, our peak time in work and in children, getting children into the world, is between 30 and 50. For some people, it's 25 to 45. But it's stupid. Yeah. Can't we work a little bit less when we bring new humans into this world, so that these new humans get the best of us?
Yeah. How right now the society, it's all set for females like you and me to choose either, and it's set for failing what we all want. Like if I want today career and a fulfilling family and support from the society around it and still be respected for what I choose, yeah, I have to compromise. And that's what like I see like a lot of like millennial couples are struggling so much with.
Absolutely.
And and then coming back to the topic of leadership. So what can we do? What can we do? Like what, like you are like current leaders. You influence the leaders. You have that reach. What can you do? What's your idea about that? How can we bring systemic change? I don't know what that change is. Like to bring more acceptance to, for example, caregiving, females having like, you know, balanced career or like whatever they want. They are like, how do we ensure that like the society is also female friendly?
Yeah. I think we had some help from the pandemic. Because it allowed, or it made us understand that we can do a lot remote or asynchronous, and we can work from anywhere, and that it's okay to have children in the back of your Zoom screen. The pandemic has also brought us, I read a research, you will find that interesting. It also brought us that work and being at the home are blurring into each other, and they made us work on average an hour more a week.
Yeah.
And so apparently we have 2 peaks a day. Like one is just before lunch, the other one is after lunch. And then now we have a new peak since the pandemic at 9 at night. Yeah. So, you know, society will change if all of us are part of the mindset change, and being understanding, being positively discriminating for women with children, being okay with, I don't think you need to work 8 hours or 10 hours to be super productive. You can work less, but there's still, the more you're visible, the more influence you have in the minds of those who promote others. So I think we need to reconsider how we recruit and promote. Right. And all of us need to positively discriminate and give good examples.
Yeah, like in that case, like maybe that's my 2 cents of an idea. Like many people work a lot more also because of this competitive environment, which is a very masculine way to be, and and like females do it. I do it. So I love to like in a competitive world. Like I'm more thrilled to learn because I want to show like, see, I can also do it. Like you're a guy, I'm a smart ass woman. So I want to show it. Like and that hunger to show. Especially with my mind, is much more just because I don't know of the trauma that we have, as females, as coming from Asian backgrounds and whatever, you know, it all has its own baggage, and that brings us very much in this competitive world. But basically, we are following the environment and the leaders, the environment that they are giving us, and
yes.
And I realized it's not sustainable. It's like I have hit into multiple times like near burnout phases, like whenever I had leaders and environments which were super competitive, and I was like, you know, you have these highs. It's like it's like a drug. It's like adrenaline shot.
It is a drug.
Yes. You want it, and you are on this hamster wheel. You don't know how to get off it, and so you don't know. Like me, inspired me knowing all these things. I was very surprised that I got into it last year.
Yeah.
And like working in this kind of an environment, I don't know if I should call it toxic or whatever, like masculine. I also gave in, and I also wanted to win. I wanted to thrive. I want to show off, like, see, I can also do it. I could do it for a day, for a week, for a month, and when you're doing it with teams, it's just I realized again and again it's set up for failure. So as leaders, and like especially with male leaders, why are we like, when it comes to like teaching like or making awareness around I would say diversity topics, like why are we not still focusing on like teaching more or accepting more and rewarding more feminine qualities like vulnerability, like empathy, like sharing? Why are we not rewarded like males? I would say like reward males for doing that, because they're still, right?
Yeah, I think we talked about that before, the whole concept of emotional labor, which every team, every relationship, every child upbringing needs emotional labor. It's the listening, the venting, the nodding, the taking time for someone to tell their story. There's research out there that it's done a lot more by women in organizations, and it keeps them from being promoted because it's the stuff that we do not recognize as being valuable for teams. You know, I think Sudhanya, it is what I called, or what the research calls, it's an adaptive problem. There's no quick fixes. It's choosing attitudes and creating awareness every day again. It is teaching and also being a role model on setting boundaries, healthier boundaries. It's being aware of the addictive effects of like it's dopamine and adrenaline addiction that we encounter in team settings, or in these big amazing status driven projects that we take leading roles in. We want to do a good job. And we exhaust our adrenals, and we just and we need coffee, and we pump ourselves up again and again. It's not, and in the long run, it's not healthy. So it's also responsibility. It's a responsibility for all of us, for the female, the male, to take good care of ourselves, to speak up, but also to be aware of biases and to positively discriminate.
I would say like have KPIs around it, like you were mentioning, like I don't know, let's brainstorm something around it. You mentioned, right, like females don't get promotion because they don't mark the whole sales target because they are busy taking care of their teams to nurture them, right? And hence they don't like meet the big targets and like a lot of clients, and that's also cool, like that's the hunting part. But like, why don't we also have KPIs around like how many of your teams like they feel really happy, energized, they feel valued, for example, around you, like to work with you, they feel like if it's a very typical, I would say, like I work in data projects, which is like very, very male-driven society. And I'm the only person I think thrives because I have always been very masculine in my way of working. But still, something that I always kept is like a smiling face and a positive attitude. And whenever I entered meetings like with this long, serious faces around me, I'm like, oh my God, what has life and data done to you that you are like going around like this in life? Like,
I love it. Yeah.
This is not the way, like for me, like you have only one life and you need to live it. And like if you're spending 8 hours, like better know that you're happy. Like why don't we have KPIs around it? Like to measure such kind of stuff.
And I'm with you. KPIs definitely help. Quotas did help in some, like we have examples where putting a quota helps. They also have side effects, as you know. They have unintended side effects where people will game the system. I'm with you. And there is one KPI that many of my clients experiment with, which it's called psychological safety. And I question if I want an organization to have it as a KPI, because then again, there's gaming around that. It is, but it's for example, it is, how can we bring more feminine qualities into our work life? Like, it's starting our meetings with a round of how are you, or what's your highlight, if you want to make it a little bit more positive, of last week, or what have you learned, or what is a fuck up of last week that you would like to share, to bring more vulnerability, and to make it okay to not be perfect. So KPIs, quotas, they definitely help. They give a direction. Objectives help, objective setting. And it's I think you are a great example. And in my coaching world, I always say that our polarities, our internal polarities, like data and emotions, you bring it both together, and you don't want to leave this one, and you don't want to let go of this one. So it's there where our excellence lives. Our excellence lives in our contradictions, in our polarities. That's where our excellence comes from.
Yeah.
And it's always for the outside world, like, but aren't you a data like person? Oh, you're also giving emotional intelligence courses. It's beautiful.
Like, to be frank, like, given an option, I wouldn't go for the emotion intelligence part, but I'll be such an unhappy person because I realize my sole purpose is so much attached to like bringing that balance that I have no option. I have just no option. Like, given the societal situation, it's much more easier to, run the rat race of the corporate and go up the ladder. It's an easier job to me, frankly. Yeah. But I have seen so many people who have run this rat race to be so unhappy, and again and again, me being so unhappy. And I'm like, and when I see these unhappy faces around me and like really like energy drained faces, it just breaks my heart. And like men and women both, and especially I have like really this soft corner for motherhood, seeing my own mother suffering, who was like a very ambitious woman, like when I was a kid. And that really breaks my heart, and I feel like so driven to do something around it, and hence the podcast, and like hence to talk to people like you. So I'm super excited around it.
Hey, and motherhood is leadership. Parenthood is a form of leadership.
Right. That's so beautifully put, because we put all these, archetypes and like, bucket our lives around like, okay, this is feminine, this is masculine, and like motherhood, like females have been leaders always. Yeah, not in big corporates, but like the reason that these big corporates are working because there was a female who was taking care of your kids and family and food and everything. And that comes through immense amount of management, selfless giving, nurturing, servants. And I so desire to to live in a society where this is valued, so that tomorrow I feel proud to be a mother, and I feel like I'll be celebrated and respected even for that choice too. Right now, my drive to maybe to be respected, or like the confidence that you were saying, that muscle is so high that like I think like I can get it only if I am constantly showing myself in this masculine world. And I think that's in the long run not a very sustainable, like I'm seeing it again and again, right? So
and so it apart, like what you said reminded me of my own journey of becoming more independent of how others see me, but really more dependent on my own inner moral purpose compass. And so what is it? And I knew, for example, when I started my own business, Inspiration and Discipline, there were people who said, "Oh no, it's not the same. You should stay. You should climb up the corporate ladder. We need more women there." And it definitely triggered something in me, a pain point, that I was like, no, I want flexibility. I want to be my own boss, because I also want to be the mom that I wanted to be.
Right.
And that was when they were 5 and 6, and I was a zombie. I was like what you described, adrenal fatigue, completely burned out. I wouldn't admit it. I would still keep on doing my stuff, but and it was such a good decision. It was such a good decision. For me, I'm also glad I didn't choose again to become 100% a mother, because that as well tires me. Being 100% with my kids is very tiring.
Right. Yeah.
And when they're babies, it's still a different story. But when they're like 7, 8, 12, I mean, nobody dares to say that, but they're very tiring. And no, I think there's enough people who dare to say it.
Dare to say that.
I wouldn't be a good full-time mom.
Yeah. And to realize that and take actions and also do that comeback. So, like, you're such an inspiration, Katharina, around that. Like, to, like, be that go-getter. Like, you were like this masculine, like, achiever person, and then you had babies and you went back to your complete feminine, and now you're back in this balance. That's like a beautiful story. Wow. Thank you so much, Katharina, for that.
And thank you for inviting me. It's beautiful.
So on that note, I think it's time to round up, but I wouldn't let you go like that. We had amazing talks around leadership and motherhood, but now I'm going to fire you some real questions. So this is the ending segment. I call it the real question round. And the thing is that I'm going to hit you with around 5 to 10. I'm not going to give you the exact number, one-liners. And you have to give your own opinion, and that's only one-liner. Only a one-liner opinion. You might also choose to say that, okay, I have no opinion about it because it might be controversial. So I have a few questions for you. And I'm not going to counter you with those, what to do around it. Yeah? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. Let me take out my questions then. Question number 1. Casual sex or committed sex?
Sex is an important part of a good life.
Very wise. Future is cryptocurrency.
Who knows?
Porn is healthy.
Good, healthy relationship to porn is definitely healthy.
Very sleekly put. Okay, how about this one? This is an easy one for you. Emotions are weakness.
Emotions are data.
Cool, thank you. I got that. White men rule.
We're in a paradigm shift.
I hope so. Parents fuck up their kids no matter what.
Absolutely.
Black Lives Matters movement made me more aware of reality.
Yeah, just as Me Too did too.
Well, yeah. Brown women are weak.
Brown women are beautiful.
Sleekly put. Thank you. Friends with benefits work.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing else. And the last one, body positivity or body neutrality?
I love positivity.
Yeah. That's a brilliant perspective, and I expect it from this powerhouse, which is so positive, to give that answer. Thank you so much, Katharina. It was absolute pleasure talking to you. I am beyond grateful to have you in my podcast as my first guest. I enjoy your infectious energy, and I think we did a great job today.
It's such a joy to be here with you. It's therapeutic, it's fun, it's connecting, it's inspiring, and I hope that your listeners, our listeners, experience the same. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you so much for your compliments.